90% of the kids all wrote about one of the four. A few students wrote about all of them.
Wow.
And it just gives you a bird's eye view into how they're thinking and what's on their mind. It's a lot going on right now for them. It's a lot.
It is. Thank you. And we're about to take a break. So I wanted that's a good place to leave us, because when we come back, you have a book, and it's called Unmute Yourself. And so as we're talking about letting students find their voice and talk about how things are going on, that's going to be a great lead in for our conversation that we're going to have about your book. And we're excited to learn about Unmute Yourself. So listeners, please stay tuned. We will be right back following our break. This is Village Talk, where we highlight the views and voices of the community.
Feature your business with a full or half-page ad in an upcoming issue of Vision and Purpose Lifestyle Magazine. Advertise your business, book, or event and reach potential clients. Vision and Purpose Lifestyle Magazine covers and features stories in business and entrepreneurship, education, performing arts, sports, community outreach, fashion, travel and real estate, health and wellness, and more. Contact us at info@vnpmagazine.com, or you can reach out to our Director of Sales, Ms. Karen McConnell-Jones, at 202-904-1000. Vision and Purpose, inspiring our community.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us here at Village Talk, where we highlight the voices and views of the community. I am Cortland Jones, and I'm here with my co-host, Shauna Felton King. Shauna, it was hard realizing we were getting ready to go into break as an educator, listening to Carol talk about all the things that she does to help her students connect and also kind of decompress. But as you stated, we're also going to hear some tidbits about her new published book, Unmute Yourself. But thank you, Carol, for joining us and sharing how you use rear view expectancy in your own life work and in support of your youth. Shauna, any thoughts you had about?
No. Yeah, I want to get right back at the title. First of all, Unmute Yourself just kind of gives me chills. I can't wait to hear about it.
It gave me chills too when I heard it as well. So this is an anthology. There were about 8 women who contributed to the anthology. For me, it initially started out as just a writing exercise. I joined a group. You were going to do this writing challenge for 5 days. And at the end of the 5 days, you could decide whether or not you wanted to contribute to the book. And every morning we met before school and had my camera off. I had my audio off. I just didn't want to I was getting emotional as they talked about different topics, and I didn't want anybody to see me get emotional. And on the last day, they had a speaker come in, Dr. Cheryl Wood, and she was talking about that sometimes when we experience certain pain, we shouldn't hold on to it, because your pain is not for you, it's for someone else. It's to help someone else. And at that moment, it was a light bulb moment. And I turned on my camera, I turned on my audio, and I spoke. And people were surprised because I hadn't spoken the whole week. And I said, I just had to come on because that really did something for me. And I just wanted to unmute and just tell you all about it. And at the same time, the visionary author behind the book, she said, it's funny that you said that. The name of the book is Unmute Yourself.
Wow. When you talk about confirmation and connection.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was at that point that I said, I'm going to share my story. Before I shared my story, though, I felt it was really important to sit down and talk to my daughters. And they had known pieces of my story, but they didn't know the full thing. And so that was a little difficult, but I needed them to understand some things, and also to know that you don't have to live in this silo or silence of pain. It's not the healthiest way to live. And so I spoke with the both of them, and I wrote my story in probably 2 days. It was two of the hardest days. Like my 13-year-old kept walking by the table looking at me, and I was just crying as I was writing it out. But my husband had told her, just leave her alone, let her cry it out. And I'm blasting music and I'm typing it because it's the first time that it was no longer in my head. It was now in black and white for me to really read it. And there was something about reading it back that really just shook me to my core. And so having experienced trauma by people that you were brought up to love and respect, your family, was hard. It was definitely hard. And so my story is about a 50-year-old woman who had to face her 5-year-old self. And all the things that she had to experience with that. And how all of it, some of it she didn't remember. Because one of the things I say is, how do you remember a pain that has been buried so deep? And for me, it was something simple as being in the park and watching a father push his daughter on the swing. And something about that moment and looking at it and thinking about my own father and the fact that we didn't really have a close relationship and just trying to figure out, well, why didn't we do those things? It was a light bulb moment. And all this stuff just came rushing back to me of things that I completely forgot that had happened to me when I was about 5. And so it was at that point, I came home and I shared bits and pieces with my husband, but I was unable to share the whole thing. And I really don't think he got the whole story until he read my story. And so it also laid the foundation for how I dealt with relationships. I could be the angry girlfriend, the angry wife, and you didn't really understand why. And very honestly, I didn't really understand why, because that's not a part of me I was tapping into. It was a part of me that was in denial. And so to confront this for myself a few months ago and then really write about it was definitely cathartic.
So obviously there's a lot to reflect on and think about and unpack, and listening to you share such a powerful testimony. Unmute yourself, just a confirmation and your experience and what led to inspiring you to want to unmute and share your story. Shauna and I have talked about the journey towards healing. Do you have a sense of healing? Not like total, complete healing, but do you feel as if this reflection and then revelation has brought about some measure of healing?
I do believe it has brought about some measure of healing. It has given me a level of breath that I didn't have before. I internalize a lot of things. And so to be able to unmute certain things has allowed me to breathe just a little bit easier. But I also realize there are more things that need to be unmuted as well. And so I am in that journey right now. The difference is that I no longer have to necessarily internalize it. I am learning to navigate through it and know that my thoughts and emotions don't have to dictate my behavior. And that is just a wow experience for me right now in life. And so I can work through these things without it changing who I am at the core of my being.
I want to rewind to something you said, because I want to dig into that a little bit, make sure I understand it. When you say I have more breath now, what does that really mean?
That means that I no longer feel the need to hold on to things like I did before. So tightly wound, and then always compartmentalizing it. So this is how I personally feel. I don't deal with it, but professionally, you'll see me out there and I you'll be like, oh, she's so always, maybe happy, or she's, doing her thing. but the two have not met. And
Mm.
so now I feel like, okay, I can deal with my personal life without having to hide it out so that I don't even know what's going on sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and still do what I need to do professionally. And that's not what I was doing for years. I was just in denial about things about me personally. So now I feel like it's a sense of relief. I can breathe. And breathing doesn't mean that it's all fixed. Breathing means that I now know how to navigate through this much more powerfully than I've ever done in my life. I'm at a completely different level than before.
Wow.
And listening to you, one of my thoughts, and I have since gone to therapy and I've had therapy regarding my past. And one of the things that came to my mind that I shared with my therapist was I really felt it was God's way of telling me you're old enough now to handle the emotion associated with your trauma. And so that's why you're having this emotional encounter with your past that you hadn't had previously, because not being able to handle the emotion could have triggered decision making that could have probably created more trauma. So in essence, I was spared that until I was old enough to then, as you said, navigate and manage it. So the reason why I asked you about journey towards healing was some would suggest there's no healing if you have any type of impact associated with the past, where my thing is, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist. I can't suggest or dictate or determine when a person is healed. But I do believe there are evidences of growth or movement towards this healing. And it sounds like to me, in listening to you, what I've believed has been confirmed, that there is a place where you get in your maturity, not so much age, but maturity,
Right.
where I can still experience the emotion of the trauma, but it's not going to corral or keep me down or keep me stuck for long as it may have in the past.
Absolutely. I think we have this misconception of what healing is. So you get a scar, it bleeds, it heals up, right? But that's not how emotions work, if we're really honest with ourselves. Because you can heal from something and still have that emotional scar that may come up from time to time, but it's how you navigate with that scar. Do you pick at it? Do you pull it completely off and then bleed and profusely and everybody's going crazy? Or do you say, you know what? I notice that this emotion is happening right now, right here, and I'm going to challenge this emotion in my thinking right now so that I don't get stuck there. Because that's what happens. A lot of people sometimes get stuck there and they don't challenge the emotion. They don't challenge the thought. And when you're not challenging it, then guess what? It starts to consume you. And so I'm all about challenging my thoughts and emotions now so that it doesn't dictate my behavior, which is amazing for me now. It's amazing.
No, I'm loving that.
It's and this time frame that you did this, give me an idea just quickly. When has this change happened for you? Was this a 5-year process? Was this a 2-year process? Did this happen for you?
We are in what, January,
Uh-huh.
April?
Yeah. So
Last year, April.
yeah. And so what I want our listeners to hear is, even though this is a journey, you have made and you can feel some major changes that have happened in your emotional life just in the last few months.
Yeah.
So if any of our listeners are dealing with a certain level of, they're saying they don't know if they can get through it, whether they're 40, whether they're 50 or whatever like that, I think your story is really encouraging to all to say we can still put the work in now and see some major differences in a short time frame, but knowing that the journey will continue.
Exactly. And just don't go into the journey thinking everything is going to go away, because things are bound to rise up again. and you just have to know how to